Hello, everyone. I think we're beginning to see people make their way into the room now, and just keeping an eye on the invite list to make sure everyone's coming in. Fantastic. Um, hi everyone. Thank you for joining us on this Thursday afternoon. I'm really excited. Sorry, Thursday afternoon, Wednesday afternoon. Week's getting way ahead of me. So really excited to have you join. This is our Visionary Summit. We are working on the Netropolitan University. This is a metaverse university that we've designed with the intention to be able to essentially transform metaverse education and start to think how we can use virtual spaces as a way to give people an immersive education that removes barriers to participation. So, what I will do is, for those of you who haven't met me, hi, I'm Jamie. I'll talk a little bit more about myself at the moment, and you can see I have my digital avatar on. So this is my virtual version of my physical self that sometimes I like to definitely start a call with, just to be able to show people the ins and outs of the technology that's here. On this call today, you'll be able to see that we've got the chat on the right-hand side. So do feel free to leave any comments, let us know that you're there. If you have any questions as we're going through, then it'd be fantastic to be able to have you come and join and share those with us. Don't have any hesitation towards asking. We're more than happy to be able to start to get people talking, really. And the whole point of today is we also, as much as I want to present the Netropolitan University, what it does, how it could help facilitate immersive education, it's to be able to make sure that people can meet each other as well. So we will have a bit of networking in our metaverse space at the end of this meeting. So let me jump on to our first slide. First of all, welcome to everyone. Thank you so much for joining and taking your valuable time out of your Wednesday to come join us. We have an agenda for this meeting today. So we're going to be looking at it in 4 parts. First of all, we're going to look at happened. So we're going to do a bit of a tour around Netropolitan, what it means, how it can all be applied to different situations, different contexts and different settings, and what some of the functionalities are, and exactly what is a metaverse university. Because let's be honest, this isn't a commonplace discussion that we've been having for a long time. The next thing we're going to be looking at is happening. So what is the current landscape of immersive education? How is that changing? How is that transforming the way that we learn and work together? And what can we do to leverage it in the education space to make sure that this is viable and useful for a range of audiences? Then finally, we are also going to look at what will happen. So what is the future of immersive education? We can already see some of the indicators of the way the immersive education landscape is moving. We want to be able to start to think about some of those ideas and share them with you to really be able to take your part in the immersive digital revolution. Finally, we're going to finish off with some networking. So we'll get you all to jump into our virtual space to be able to have a walk around, start communicating with people and not just hear about the experience and see the functionality, but to actually go and experience it yourself. So for those of you who I haven't met before, hi, I'm Jamie Beakoff-Brett. I look very much like my avatar at the moment. So I am a human-centric innovator and award-winning social impact entrepreneur. I've founded an organization called MetaHub. This was as part of our digital revolution, really. When during the pandemic, I was thinking about, as a trainer and facilitator, how can we make sure that education is valuable, that it is done in a different way? Because as you can imagine, during the pandemic, everything was online. And from a training and facilitation perspective, that had a lot of limitations to it. So what I wanted to be able to do with MetaHub was to think about how we can make sure the spaces align with the educational content that we're trying to deliver in order to be able to create something that's a little bit different. So I am very proud to have launched MetaHub. We've been in business for about 3 years now, and really at the forefront of some of immersive education in virtual spaces. So one of the things that we did at the beginning of the pandemic was a 3-day conference where we had people all from around the world wearing VR headsets over 3 days, being able to do their team retreats, being able to meet each other, new people at the organization, onboarding, all in virtual spaces that we created. We've hosted a lot of different conferences and events within our virtual worlds, and a lot of this has helped inform the way that we actually design, because you might be surprised to know there's actually very little resources out there on how you can design virtual spaces and how people will react in virtual spaces. There's a really interesting case study done on World of Warcraft about something called the corrupted blood pandemic, which is where they had a situation where people's behaviors when they had a virus that got out of control in World of Warcraft mirrored people's responses within the physical world when it came to the pandemic. And I found that really interesting because we have to start thinking about how do people behave within these virtual worlds and how does that influence how they behave in the real world, and try and combine those two things together. So I am fortunate enough to have had a few fantastic collaborators with us on this project. One of them is my brother Linford. He is my metaverse engineer, so I do a lot of the architecture and asset design, and he does a lot of the world building. We've also got Lauren, who is on the call with us today, who shared her fantastic insights with us and is part of our NPC panel that we'll talk about a little bit later on, and the same thing for Winnie as well. Do feel free to add all your comments, questions, anything that you might come across in the chat. So what is the metaverse? What on earth am I going on about when I'm talking about this whole idea of a metaverse university? The metaverse really is this concept of the 3D envisioning of the web. And when we're talking about a lot of the technologies that we're looking at, that you can see a lot of conversations going on at the moment, when you hear about AI, Web3, the metaverse, spatial technology, all of these things I think can really easily be summarized as the future of the internet and e-commerce. That's what you really need to think about. It's almost essentially, when we're looking at our metaverse spaces, it's like the internet's coming to life, and it's not just occupying a 2D screen in front of us, but it is occupying a 3-dimensional world that can be augmented around us, could be 3D worlds that are connected together, but essentially making it so our distinguishing features between our physical and our digital world are getting more and more indistinguishable. And one of the ways that we interact within these virtual spaces is more similarly to how we'd react in the physical world. So if you think about engaging with your digital worlds at the moment, you do so via your keyboard, your mouse, and you've got a 2D screen in front of you, and that's really how you engage with it. But really, the metaverse is about trying to think about how that starts to work when it's no longer just web pages that are connected together, but it's 3D assets that are connected together, it's worlds that are connected together, and done in different ways as well. So it could be centralized, it could be decentralized, and that can all depend on influencing how people participate within those virtual spaces. It's also an area of huge interest, yes, with virtual VR technology, but beyond that as well. We can still access the whole idea of this around the internet through other means as well. But the whole point is that we are connecting together these spaces in a more immersive way. The market is hugely on the rise when it comes to metaverse. We're looking at an expected 825 billion industry by the time it comes to 2030. When we start to look at young people's participation in the metaverse, and I always think about this when I think about when I have these conversations around metaverse and spatial technology, is that scene from Back to the Future where he goes, "Oh, maybe you guys aren't ready for this, but your kids are gonna love it." And I think that very much reflects within the space of when we start to look at things like Fortnite concerts. In 2023, 10.7 million people joined Fortnite concerts, 3D concerts in virtual spaces, which is a huge amount of a growing population of people. And it is expected that by 2026, 25% of people will spend at least 1 hour within the metaverse a day, which is a huge amount of time that people are starting to garner towards these virtual spaces. So We have got a question there. We talk about metaverses, but we still have to talk a lot about these multiverses today. So there isn't really a standard interface that helps you move between them. And that's very true. Like a lot of what we're doing at the moment is really laying the seeds and sowing the foundations of it. If you think to the future of the internet, when people started connecting web pages together, there was a lot of questions like, but why? Why would you connect web pages together? What difference does it make? Why do I need to have this online database of information of all these separate things, different assets connected together? And then obviously it's turned out to be the information hub of and the catalyst of the digital revolution. And that's very much what we can expect to see within our virtual metaverse technologies. So why build a university in the metaverse? What's the purpose of it? Well, we wanted to make sure that we could look at how we can use these virtual spaces as a source for social good. When we start to think about some of these different ways that we can deliver this, we can start to deliver things as a democratic, we can help democratize education. So essentially making sure that location dependence doesn't result in the kind of education that you're going to get. If you have access to the internet and a computer, you have access to resources and potentially training and facilitation that you wouldn't possibly be able to imagine otherwise. And we can have those as immersive experiences, which means we connect people from all over the world into classrooms that can be tailored towards those individuals as well. And that ties into accessibility. So making sure that we have virtual spaces that are accessible on demand, anytime, any device, anywhere, and by anyone. And this is a huge part of the work that I do, is looking at how we can remove barriers that prevent people from participating. So for example, if I was to look at neurodiversity, we could design a virtual space that has a particular neurodiversity in mind. Let's say someone who's autistic. And we might be able to customize that environment to go, well, actually, we're going to mute some of the colors so it's less overwhelming. We're going to make sure that there's not so many moving parts so it doesn't become overstimulating. However, we could have somebody who has, ADHD, dyslexia, other side of the spectrum, and we want to be able to make sure, well, actually, they want to be able to have lots of moving parts, lots of bright colors to keep that engagement going on. And what should be able to happen as we advance this technology is those people should be able to be in exactly the same space, but control the environment based on their own preferences. So they can choose how they want to perceive and how they experience that environment based on the way that they prefer to learn and experience things. And this has always been really beneficial to the work that we look at from our neurodiversity perspective and from an accessibility perspective, is that when we accommodate the extremes, we benefit the mean. And what I mean by that is that building products that actually suit people on the fringes actually helps the people in the middle. I'll give you a really good example. The remote control, the humble remote control, was designed for disabled people who were in a wheelchair to be able to change the television channels without having to get up to be able to do so, because it used to be that you'd go up to your TV and you'd need to actually go and press a button on it to be able to go and do that. But in order to remove that barrier, remote controls were created. Now everybody has a remote control. Everybody uses a remote control for their TV. So that accommodation that was designed for a specific accessibility requirement can be beneficial to everyone. Now, you don't have to be neurodiverse to be able to go into a space and want to change the settings to be able to be lined up with your preferences. It's sometimes just about being able to have those choices available for you. So by building for preferences, we're not just helping with accessibility, but we're also looking at the social model of disability and ensuring that people can participate without having to have a statemented request or something like that in order to do so. So our vision when it came to the Netropolitan was to be able to, unlock these unprecedented opportunities for learning and innovation and global collaboration. And our mission was to revolutionize education, creating immersive interactive learning environments that transcend traditional boundaries. Now, the metaverse and virtual reality and virtual spaces are a great opportunity to be able to do this, because you can gain high engagement rates with deep brand recognition. I've got a colleague of mine called Elena who works at NeuroXR, and we can measure so much more about people engaging in virtual worlds than we can do on 2D web pages. For example, we can ensure that there is we can look at people's emotional reactions to what they're engaging with. So let's say there is a particular part of the web page or part of your metaverse space, and you can go, you know what, we can hotspot that like we would do on a web page when it comes to a button. You go, well, actually, this is where people spend a lot of time, and what they're engaging with is this logo, but we can measure their interactions and their emotional reactions to those environments, to those different spaces. And this means that when we measure this, we also start to look at higher engagement. So when we're looking at how people participate in virtual worlds versus on a web page, people engage with it for far longer, for minutes and not milliseconds. When you're measuring a page interaction, you're looking at milliseconds. But when we're looking at virtual worlds, because people come on the journey with you of wanting to explore and engaging that curiosity, what happens is people spend a lot more time in there and they engage with it for a lot longer, which means from an education perspective, this is fantastic, because one of the hardest things to be able to do with a web page is to keep people on there enough to be able to take the content that you're trying to give them. Whereas being able to design that into a virtual world means that we're now able to make sure that people take more away from that learning experience. This obviously leads to a great opportunity with brand placements as well. If you've got something that's higher emotional reaction, higher engagement, you can imagine that that's why people will start to notice those brands in those spaces a lot more. There is no secret to why someone like Meta has started to really draw their attention towards the metaverse, and that's because if you work on the attention model, which most social media channels do, where you're trying to monetize people's engagement, something that people engage with for minutes rather than milliseconds is obviously going to be a lot better when it comes to that engagement that you're trying to get, and you're able to monetize that attention more. So yes, there's different ways of being able to look at it. Some of it is related to that educational need, keeping that high engagement rates, but also we have to think about that brand placement as well, and how that can support organizations to be able to have more of an impact. I can see there's a few questions in there, but the last one that's just coming from Dylan there, we need to be careful about what data is gathered from children, wary of letting people develop these profiles too early. Of course, 100%. One of the reasons that we design this space is also to educate people around that, because younger children are more susceptible to immersive technologies. But also it helps. We need to help people to be able to make sense of the world. And that's what a lot of we have at the moment. Someone said to me today, I grew up in an era that I have so much more access to data than ever before. So that's great, but how much support do you have to make sense of that data, to make sense of that information? Having all of these resources and libraries to be able to work from doesn't help if somebody doesn't help you make sense of it. So that's one thing that I want to be able to make sure we're doing when it comes to these immersive spaces, is to educate people on how to not be taken in, to leverage the benefits of it without being caught out by the negative aspects of it as well. And as much as we do need to protect people's data on it, it also leads to an amazing opportunity to be able to customize education based on the individual. So based on the data that we're collecting, being able to go, well, actually, this person responds to this kind of educational content better. So let's transform this in a way that lines up with that. And that's something that we can't do through traditional education. So we're really looking once again at that educational excellence and associating this technology with getting towards educational excellence through customizing it based on the individual. So we're going to take you into the space in a minute, and I wanted to show you some of the features and everything that we've got, but to kind of go off the back of that educational excellence is the whole point of us designing this virtual metaverse university was to give a multimodal learning. So we have NPC panels that deliver content, we have gamified content, we have expertise on demand, we've got an AI tutors to be able to support, but the whole point is to make education more engaging and more effective. We will show you some of those features in a second. The other thing is this space is designed twofold. One for self-directed education and one for instructor-led education. So self-directed, meaning that somebody can access this space on whatever time that they want, on any device that they want to. It's available via mobile phone, VR headset, and web page. And they are able to engage within this virtual world and learn from NPC-related tutors. At the same time, we've made it so we can turn off all of the self-directed features, and you could host a conference or a webinar or any kind of other content that you'd be interested in, also in that virtual space. We've also, and this has come a lot from delivering events and working with students and working within these conference spaces, is we've customized those environments to be able to make sure that there's a lot of host tools that allow the person who might be leading as an instructor to be able to control the environment. You'll see a very big fan favorite of one of the whole host tools that we've created, which is a pin button, which stops all of the avatars moving within the space. Now, if anyone's engaged within a virtual world before, they know trying to get people to stop and listen to what you're doing is a very hard thing to do. So being able to pin people to the spot to be able to get people to listen is a really useful tool, something that you definitely cannot do in real life, not without the law getting involved. So just another consideration that we can do within virtual worlds is customize it and control the environment in ways that we couldn't do in a physical world. So let me show you some of the features of this platform. First of all, this is our platform. So you can see that it has three main areas to it. The first part is this Metaverse window. This is where people can engage within our virtual space and start to explore around the virtual world. We also have our AI tutor on the right-hand side. So this tutor is trained by all of my social media data. You see that I put a lot online about how virtual technologies and emerging technologies are going to influence the future. This is one of the ways that I'm able to leverage it as part of an AI tutor that people can ask questions to and get information from. So you could be talking to someone, you could hear a piece of content, and then you could have that customized by the AI tutor being able to help to respond. Now, the ultimate aim of that is to then also be able to bring that into our AI tutors in the world, but we'll talk about that in a little bit more time. We've also got a resources, collaborators section down the bottom as well to be able to give you feedback, and also a lot more information on the people that have helped contribute to the space, particularly for our NPC panel. When I say NPC, for those who are not familiar with the terminology, it's non-playable characters. So it's this person right here that isn't one of your people who roams the world with consciousness, but one of those people that's already there, always on demand, ready to support. So that's a lot of our more self-directed stuff, and I'm going to walk you through some of our self-directed world building aspects to begin with. So how do you get around a virtual world? Well, you can run, you can move around the virtual space by talking to people, but you can also use other things to be able to get around as well, things like teleports and hoverboards, which we'll come on to a bit. But essentially, this has a quest function as part of it. So you can see that we've just gone up and spoken to our first avatar. And the whole point is this avatar's gone, hey, this is at the world. What you need to go is go and talk to this next person. And that quest in the bottom left-hand side means you can lead people through a learning journey where they can keep talking, they can keep engaging, they can keep learning from people about what's going on within that space. So they can go through and start to develop a lot of understanding about the information that we're trying to communicate. For this space, we've done it specifically around Web3, the Metaverse, and AI. It's excuse the joke, but a little bit meta. But that's the whole point of what we wanted to do, is educate people on these immersive technologies using examples that we can bring into our virtual space. So you can see we've got our planet there in our cyberspace, which explains the concept of the metaverse, these virtual worlds with the squares representing spaces being joined together. And we can also have different characters that relate to the subject that we're talking about. So our conversations on AI are led by a robot tutor, for example, just to be able to kind of give people a bit more understanding about what's going on. I think this one, yep. So we also have different tools being able to get around. So as I said, there's hoverboards, there's teleports. We have a lot of different ways that people can work way around the space. One of the reasons that we have teleports in the space is we've designed big virtual worlds before, and we realized that the problem is that when people try to get around, or they try to find something, or they need to get somewhere quickly, we wanted to be able to make sure there was a teleport functionality so they could do so. So each of the buildings has a teleport functionality to be able to take them around as well. Um, we've noticed that the size of the space does make a huge difference to people's participation. So we've kind of got it at the level now that we're sure that this is about the right space for a virtual world participation. And that's something we've also learned from doing events and working with students, is trying to be able to herd cats, as it were, into certain spaces can be really difficult. So being able to make it simple for people to get around is really useful. And also using things like hoverboards as another mode of transportation, so people can get wet places fast, but it's also a fun way to kind of add that solar punk dynamic to what we've got for our virtual worlds. Now, this is some of our other ways of engaging. So you've seen that you can engage with NPC tutors. They're the people who are going to lead you around the virtual world and give you content. But we also didn't want to limit it to that. That can get very tedious after a while. So we have things like an NPC panel that's based on real people being able to share information, and you can just walk in at any point and the panel is in the middle of having that conversation. So it's a lot more interactive, and you're hearing from people in a different way. It's not just NPCs talking to you, but actual real life people with real life expertise that you can learn from, that you can gather insights from. You can also see there's tablets around the place. So if you want to be able to add in extra information, something to be able to do with a follow-up, you can add those into our virtual worlds as well. So people can start to engage, learn a little bit more, and fantastic opportunity for brand placement as well. And one of the things we've also learned from doing these, particularly with Bocconi, is people love a good scavenger hunt. So we've added things like hidden graffiti tags that you can walk around in space to be able to learn more about people, concepts, different ideas, with being able to then go through to another website or something like that. So a different kind of resource that you might want to be able to have. And another way that we like to engage people is by gamifying the learning as well. So this game works as an agent-based game. If you've ever seen The Matrix, think, agents. We wanted to put an agent in our virtual world, in our Matrix. And the whole point is it teaches the young person about avatar design. So we talk to them about digital identity, what it means to have your digital identity hijacked, what it means to, have malicious actors in virtual spaces. You can see our agent going in the background here. But the whole point was to change the message of education to not just be something that's being virtually spoken to someone, but as a way to give them an interactive way of doing it. So you can see that within this space, if the agent catches you, he hijacks your avatar, and you have to go to the laptop to go and get the antivirus, anti-agent software, being able to install your avatar back. Once again, teaching people a little bit more about some of those things that people were raising concerns with. How do you make sure that people know how to stay safe within the space? How do people know what's real? How, when you're all avatars, you can see me joining as an avatar at the moment. You don't know if there's a real person behind this or if it's an AI agent, and that blurring between our physical and our digital world is becoming more and more indistinguishable. So once again, how can we teach people to have an better understanding around what it means to participate in virtual worlds and how to tell between good actors and bad actors within the space? And once you've completed all of the quests, you've spoken to all of the people within the space, you earn your Netropolitan diploma. So this is a badge that gets added to your spatial profile, and that says, hey, you've been able to participate in the space and you've learned through all of the content. Now, that's for your self-directed learning, but what about for the instructor-led? What have we done to be able to make that more seamless? So first of all, you've got a host tool. So if you're a host within the space, the instructor who's leading it, you have different ways that you can change the environment. One of them, locking certain spaces. If someone's late to your lecture, you can lock that room. You can make sure that somebody can't come in after they've been there. You can see we've got some of the teleport stuff, functionality at the top there as well. once again, we're talking about different ways that people can perceive the space. So we've done it as a change of day functionality, that we can make sure that we can set the time and location to be able to match the kind of energy or vibe that you're doing. Even being able to set off fireworks in the background to make it have a bit more of a celebratory feel. Um, and also you can customize all of the self-directed learning as well. So if you wanted to be able to do things like turn off all of the avatars within the panel, you can, or with any of the space, you can literally just turn them all off. So it's primed for a live event. If you've got the avatars on, you can turn off the quest functionality. You can turn off the teleport functionality if you need to be able to do that. And as I said, the teacher's favorite here is definitely this pin button. So at the moment, you can press on all the keys, but all you can do is change the camera. You can't move the character, which is super useful when you're trying to do a presentation and everyone's running around. Trust me. So once again, it's just other different features that we've learned from hosting and controlling these events. They were like, you know what, if we could do this, that would be amazing. There's some other host tools here as well, which are built into Spatial. You can, microphones, cameras, being able to do recordings in the space, and also being able to share your screen. So, being able to use this as a presentation function as well. We can still go and deliver that. And finally, the other thing that we've built in is to make sure that you can have control when you want to be able to see the stage as well. So you can zoom in, you just press the Z key, and it will give you the stage view of what you're looking at, which is something that we don't really see offered in other virtual spaces. And they're all custom built features that we've added in ourselves. So where have we started this off? You've heard me mention Bocconi a few times. I won't get you to read through the whole thing, but I will add some links in the chat at the end of this. We started this off with Bocconi University as a way to be able to look at how they could use the metaverse to engage students. We had really positive feedback from the event, both from the tutor, from Laura, who piloted it with us, but also from other people, the young people that we had participate within the space as well. So, making sure we're adding that immersiveness. We can see that there was such a skepticism towards it as well. When I first spoke to Laura, she was like, I think this is going to be boring. Like, I think people are going to find it boring. I think they're going to be, what's their engagement going to be like? I said, Laura, I have no idea. Until we try it out, we're never going to know. And we had such a positive, overwhelming feedback from the students. This was unsolicited feedback that was sent to Laura from one of the students after the workshop, and she wanted to forward it on to me. So we can see the energy of being able to deliver things differently, even if it is as a novel concept or if it is about value. Both of those seem to be captured in the way that students perceive that event. So that's really useful from our perspective. Fantastic. So what are our current use cases when we're looking at virtual worlds and building them into the metaverse? Well, these are three that we think are probably the most prominent at the moment, where we can see the biggest value in being able to do so already. The first one, if we're looking at from a business use case, is being able to enhance onboarding and training. This is one of the first reasons that I got involved in looking at immersive technology, is if you've got a workforce that's located all over the world, you want to be able to make sure that people can have some degree of a consistent onboarding process. And I've worked in onboarding and I know how difficult that is. We know that the biggest amount of money lost in organizations when it comes to new hires is between the moment that they get offered the job and the first day that they start. If somebody, what quite often happens is somebody has another offer come in, or they decide this isn't the right opportunity, and that if they drop off at that point, it normally costs on average 10 grand for the organization, because they have to go through the hiring process again, recruitment costs, employee staff time. That's a huge loss for something that never materialized into being anything. But we also know that one of the things that employees and new hires are always crying out for, and we see, I think it's a 92% of people want to be engaged by the organization before their first day. So being able to develop spaces like this means that we are able to do things like people could go into a virtual world and have their HR presentation. They could have hear the CEO talk about the organization, the direction, the strategy. They could engage with your workplace as a metaverse, do a tour of the building. look at different parts of the spaces that are relevant to what you want to be able to do for the future, and have that engagement piece that happens before they even start in the office. Now, if you think about the staff time that it takes to deliver these presentations over and over and over again, for us, when I was doing it, it was every 2 weeks you had, each of the teams delivering this presentation. Well, actually, we can build that consistency into the virtual space so people can still continue to learn to get that information without having to use a valuable staff time to be able to go and deliver it again. Which means when you come into the office, you've already got a certain sense of the information that you need. And that means that when you do go into those meetings with people, you're really just kind of getting into it to ask the questions rather than just trying to get the foundational concepts. Another use case for us is attracting international students. So we really want to think about how we can break down geographical barriers to university, higher education through virtual campuses. You might have students that aren't able to make it to the first day or open days when they're coming to the universities they want to go to. This means that they can access some degree of that virtual campus before they've even started on the first day they're coming to the university. So being able to look at how we can deliver things in global classrooms, deliver, fostering these kind of cultural exchanges, and also for universities to reach people they would have never been able to reach before through other means of communication. So it's a great way to once again add to that immersiveness and to attract people into your worlds. And finally, conferences, events, and community building. So we want to be able to use these virtual worlds as community hubs. Essentially, in some ways, it forms an alternative to a website. Normally, if people are going on your website, they're only participating for that small space of time. But what we can do is have a community of people where they can learn about what you do, learn about the other support that's there, but also engage with other people with similar interests, be able to participate in a way that's more meaningful. And it can be more about how people share and grow together, really kind of looking at that real richness of virtual worlds coming together and being networked together. And I wanted to be able to kind of give some examples of that. So we've spoken about, what this investment means for people to start thinking about engaging within the metaverse. We're looking at market growth potential opportunities, those community-driven social learning opportunities as well, and also that some of those brand placement bits. And I want to give you some examples of people who are doing things very well within this space or have just started to enter this space, and really what I would consider to be some of the first dominoes falling. So we have LG, who literally last week have launched their virtual space in exactly the same way that we've got our virtual campus there, but they've done it for specific products and services that they've offered. So they have a virtual world that they have, an introduction space, takes people through LG, what they're doing. They have a product showcase. There's different ways of being able to look at the showrooms of different things they have, an auditorium space to be able to launch events, engage people within these virtual worlds. And we can see that there's been a lot of positive feedback from people engaging within these virtual worlds. So it really opens up those kind of new possibilities for exploration, learning, and collaboration. And LG are one of the first organizations that I've seen capitalizing on that in such an innovative way. And I'm also going to stop sharing my screen for a second and bring it back up so I can share the sound on this video. I think it's going to be. That's no problem. Let me talk you through what's going on here. Last week as well, Engage, which is another virtual reality platform, another metaverse space and world builder, has started including things like being able to use AI within avatars as well. So you can use data points, interviews, books that are written by people to train your AI avatars, and then use it as a way to be able to have a conversation with people in history that you would have never had the opportunity to meet. Once again, being able to create those virtual worlds to have the environment also line up with the educational content. And this means that, let's take universities where they might have guest lecturers from fantastic spaces, or who've got a huge amount of knowledge, or using those recordings, they can make sure that it's not just the group that was available at the time that gets to hear that lecture, but someone else can go into a virtual world and engage in that immersive lecture at a time that works for them. So we continually get that information that we want to be able to get from the experts and the people that we want to be able to talk to. Now, this is a really new feature for Engage. It's only been released in the last week. And this is also something that we've been planning on incorporating into our virtual world, is being able to have our avatars be backed up by AI that people can interact with as well. So you don't just have a tutor that can deliver you information, but a tutor that you can interact with and share content with, be able to ask questions to. So we have our text-based one on the side, but the vision in probably the next 6 months is to be able to bring that into our avatars as well. If you're particularly interested in what we've done with the Netropolitan University, we do have opportunities to be able to promote some of the work that we're doing here as well. So we're looking for partners to be able to work with us in building these spaces. You'll see that there's lots of spaces for branding opportunities to add your banner to sponsor the education that we're trying to do. We can also host events in the space. So if you want to be able to launch a metaverse event, or you want to be able to bring people in to be able to engage within these virtual worlds, you can use our virtual space to be able to do it. Or perhaps you're looking to be able to have a very similar thing, but for your own organization. We can either reskin environments, which basically means take our pre-existing environments and add your branding, your colors, anything that represents your organization to it. And also we can build those worlds from scratch as well. So if you've got specific ideas or a specific vision in mind, well, we can always take it back to the basics, be able to bring it back into making sure that this world is entirely customized for what you're looking for. Really, the only limitation to being able to do so is your imagination. That's one of the joys of working within virtual spaces, is we're not bound by physical constraints, let alone anything to do with the physical world dynamics or anything like that. We can change it all. If you want your avatars to fly, we can make them fly. It really depends on what you're looking for from that experience. So I want to invite you all to be able to jump into the space, but before I do, I just want to be able to check if we've got any questions, any thoughts, anything that people would like to be able to add in the chat. So I can see lots of resource sharing, which is fantastic. And there is some questions up there. Why should avatars sit somewhere in the space? You are sitting or standing, but why should an avatar sit? It really depends on how people want that immersiveness to be able to work for them. What you find within seating of bits is we can change the camera angle to be able to work for that individual. So if we want it to be able to then point towards a stage or something like that, seating gives us an opportunity to be able to do that. As well as we have some degree of comfort to be able to make sure our virtual worlds in some way mirror our physical world. And I think that's just actually just the stage of where we're at when it comes to virtual spaces. We designed this space to look like a physical space, like you would do for a normal university campus, with some little modern flares added in. But we found that the more abstract we go, or the more difficult it is for people to conceptualize in comparison to the real world, the harder it is for them to want to be able to engage and understand and learn in it. What technology have we built this on? So this uses Blender for our modeling. Once again, free software. What we want to do is make sure that anything that we're working with, we can teach people how to do at very low cost and with applications that are free to be able to do so. So Blender, a free software for 3D modeling. Unity, which we use for our scripting and custom coding. And the platform is Spatial, which is where we host it on. We've done that because we find that those are some of the most accessible ways to be able to do it, and some of the technologies at the forefront of this revolution at the moment, but not because we couldn't use other things to be able to do it with as well. So that's what we currently utilize. Fantastic. Well, what I'd like us to all be able to do is, we have 15 minutes left, which is exactly the amount of time that I wanted to have left, to be able to get you to jump into our virtual space and to start to experience it. You can also network with people. There's a chat functionality there. You can turn microphones on. It uses spatial audio, so the closer you are to someone's avatar, the louder that you'll hear them. But I'd love to be able to see you jump into the space. I'm going to stay on here for it to answer any questions that people might have. But thank you so much for everyone for joining. I hope you found this interesting. And I'd love for you to be able to click that feedback button at the bottom of the platform as well after you've gone around the experience, and just let us know what you think of it. but I'll stick around for any questions as well. I've seen there's some in the chat, but I'll be on here if anyone wants to ask anything extra. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your energy. And I hope you find this innovation interesting and it sparks some ideas within the world that you're working in.